Imagine being at the center of a life-altering moment, a simple decision that could change everything. That's exactly what happened to a young woman named Sarah. It was just another day at her office. Or at least it seemed that way, until one small act of kindness set off a chain of events she never could have predicted. Sarah was fired, not for something she'd done wrong, but for something she did that the world would never forget. Helping a young boy, Barron Trump, during a time when the spotlight couldn't be more intense. To understand how it all unfolded, we need to go back to that day, the day Sarah made a choice. She didn't know it then, but that single decision would open a door to an entirely new chapter of her life. Barron Trump, the son of the President of the United States, was in a public setting, overwhelmed by attention from media and people alike. While many stood by, Sarah couldn't bear to see him struggle. She did what felt right in the moment. She stepped in, offering her help in a way that seemed so simple, yet it would cause waves in ways she couldn't even imagine. What happened next was swift and unforgiving. Sarah's bosses, already under pressure due to her association with the family, wasted no time. She was fired. No warning, no second chances. One mistake, and it was over. In the blink of an eye, everything she had worked for was gone. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just a story of loss. It was the beginning of something bigger, something that would completely transform her life. The next day, as Sarah packed up her things and faced the harsh reality of her situation, something extraordinary happened. The phone rang, and with it, news that would change everything. But what was the news? Was it a call offering redemption, a new opportunity, or something entirely different? Could this be the turning point Sarah needed to regain her confidence and her footing in the world? Or was it the final blow that would push her to a place she could never come back from? As the story unfolds, we will dive into the unexpected twists and turns of Sarah's journey, from losing her job over an act of kindness to the moment when everything changed. Her life, once full of certainty, would soon be rewritten in ways that were unimaginable. But what did this call truly mean for her future? And how could one small act spark such a dramatic shift? Stay with us as we unravel the mystery and excitement of Sarah's story and find out what happened the day that phone call arrived. So, what was it that could turn her world upside down in just 24 hours? You'll have to keep watching to find out. The next part of Sarah's journey is one you won't want to miss. The phone call came as a shock, more so because Sarah wasn't prepared for it. After everything that had happened, she had spent the entire night replaying the moment she helped Barron Trump in her head. She hadn't even thought about the consequences at the time. It was just a child in need of help. And yet, here she was, jobless and facing a future that seemed uncertain at best. As Sarah stared at the phone screen, her heart pounded. She had no idea who would be calling her so early. When she answered, the voice on the other end was calm, but it carried an undertone of urgency. "This is David Thornton. I'm with the Trump Organization," the voice said. For a moment, Sarah couldn't speak. The Trump Organization? What could they possibly want with her? David explained that her actions, though controversial, had not gone unnoticed. In fact, her empathy had caught the attention of someone close to Barron Trump. It turned out that Barron's struggle in the public eye wasn't something people took lightly, and Sarah's decision to step in had been seen as something rare, an act of kindness in a world that often felt cold and disconnected. David offered her a meeting to discuss what might come next. Sarah didn't know what to think. Was this a trap? Was it some kind of PR move to save face for the Trump family? She was unsure, but one thing was clear. This was a door opening for her, a door she had never even known existed. the thought of a fresh start, or perhaps a way to redeem herself in the eyes of the world, was almost too tempting to ignore. But there was something nagging at her. The way she had been fired, so suddenly and without compassion. Was this phone call a sign that the world was offering her a chance to move on? Or was it a game of manipulation, a way to control the narrative? Her emotions were in turmoil as she prepared to meet with David. She couldn't help but feel conflicted. On one hand, she wanted to do the right thing and move forward, to rebuild her life after such a public fall from grace. On the other hand, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that she had been used for the benefit of a family that didn't know her, that didn't care about her struggles, but only about their image and their reputation. The meeting was set for the next morning. When Sarah walked into the office, she was struck by how pristine everything seemed. The Trump Organization's headquarters had an air of power and influence that was undeniable. She felt out of place, but determined to find out what this was really about. David greeted her warmly, his demeanor kind, but professional. He assured her that they understood how hard the situation had been, that the firing was not a personal attack. He emphasized that Barron's well-being was always the top priority, and it was because of her actions that they felt compelled to reach out. But it didn't take long for Sarah to realize that things weren't as straightforward as they seemed. David started talking about an opportunity, one that could completely change the course of her life. The details were vague, but what he was suggesting was a chance to step into the spotlight, to become part of something much bigger than herself. Sarah could work directly with Barron and the Trump family in various capacities, using her background in public relations to help manage the public image of the family, particularly Barron. As he grew older and more involved in the public eye, the offer was tempting, and yet something about it didn't sit right with Sarah. She could see the unspoken pressure behind David's words. This wasn't about helping her. This was about controlling the narrative, shaping the perception of Barron Trump and the Trump family, and using Sarah as a pawn in their grand scheme. She wasn't naive. She could tell that they were looking for someone who could be manipulated, and someone who would fall in line and do what they were told without asking questions. As David outlined the potential rewards, exclusive access to events, a platform to build her career, and the chance to work closely with one of the most powerful families in the world, Sarah felt a rising sense of unease. She had seen firsthand how quickly things could turn, how easily someone could be discarded for the sake of optics. The fear of being used again, of losing her sense of self, crept into her mind. But as the conversation continued, something shifted. David hinted at a deeper, more personal connection. He mentioned that Barron himself had taken note of her kindness, that the boy, who had been under constant scrutiny and pressure, saw Sarah as someone who was genuine, someone who understood the weight of living under a microscope. It was a personal matter now, not just a professional one. Barron's family wanted to offer Sarah a chance, not only for a career, but to be a friend, someone who could help him navigate the challenges of growing up in such a public life. That's when Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected Barron to be a real person in all of this, just another figure in the media circus. But now it seemed like he had noticed her for the right reasons. She was no longer just a stranger. She was someone who could genuinely make a difference in his life. Still, doubt lingered. Sarah had been burned before, and she wasn't sure she could trust this situation. As she walked out of the meeting, the weight of the decision bore down on her. What would she do? Accept the opportunity and risk being part of something that could strip away her own identity, or turn it down and continue to fight her way through life on her own terms, but with no guarantees of success? The tension was palpable as Sarah sat alone in her car, the phone in her hand, contemplating the future. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It wasn't even about Barron. It was about who she was becoming, who she wanted to be. Could she handle the pressure? Could she still stay true to herself in a world that seemed determined to push her in directions she wasn't sure she wanted to go? The answer was still out of reach, but the clock was ticking. The next move would define everything. Would she choose fame and fortune, or would she stand firm in her values? The decision wasn't easy, and the consequences, whatever they were, loomed large. The next few days were a whirlwind for Sarah. Her mind raced with questions, and every time she tried to focus, the weight of her decision pressed harder on her shoulders. Should she accept the offer from the Trump organization and step into the spotlight, a world that seemed to offer everything: wealth, connections, a chance to truly make a difference in Barron's life? Or should she trust her gut and walk away, knowing that she'd be risking everything she'd worked for, including her own peace of mind? But then, just as Sarah was about to make her decision, another phone call came in. This one was different. It wasn't from David Thornton or anyone from the Trump organization. Instead, it was a friend from her past, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. It was Jenna, her college roommate, who had watched Sarah grow through the ups and downs of life. The sound of Jenna's voice, warm and familiar, immediately soothed some of the anxiety that had been building up inside of Sarah. "I saw the news," Jenna said, her tone serious but supportive. "I know what you're going through, Sarah, and I know how hard this must be. But whatever you do, don't lose yourself in all of this." Sarah leaned back in her chair, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. It was as though Jenna had read her mind. She'd been so caught up in the noise of her own thoughts, the pressure of the Trump organization's offer, that she had forgotten who she really was and what mattered most. "You've always been the one to do the right thing, no matter the cost," Jenna continued. "And I know that deep down, you're not just looking for fame or a job. You're looking for something real. Don't let the world tell you what to do. You know what's best for you." It was as if those words were exactly what Sarah needed to hear. They reminded her of who she had been before all of this, before the pressures, the judgments, and the promises of a life of luxury. Jenna's words brought her back to her roots, to a time when she had been fearless and true to herself. The next morning, Sarah made her decision. She called David Thornton and politely declined the offer. It wasn't an easy choice, and it wasn't a popular one, but in her heart, she knew it was the right one. She refused to let herself be swayed by the glittering promises of fame and fortune. Instead, she decided to take a different path, one where she could use her skills and her heart to make a difference in her own way. What followed was unexpected. A few days later, Sarah received a message from Barron Trump himself. It was a short, simple note, expressing his gratitude for her kindness and offering his support as she moved forward. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was real. Barron, despite the world around him, had noticed Sarah's integrity, and in that moment, she realized that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't just change your life. It can have a ripple effect that reaches beyond your expectations. In the months that followed, Sarah rebuilt her career on her own terms. She worked with organizations that aligned with her values, and her reputation as someone who genuinely cared about people and causes grew. While she didn't gain fame or fortune from her decision, she gained something far more valuable, a sense of peace and purpose. Her journey wasn't without its challenges, but the one thing she never lost was herself. The people who mattered most saw her for who she truly was, someone who had the courage to make the tough calls, even when it meant stepping away from the limelight. And in the end, That was the most important thing. As Sarah looked back on the moment that had changed everything, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. The events that had seemed so overwhelming at the time had led her to a place where she felt more authentic and grounded than ever before. And she realized that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones that happen when you choose to follow your own path, even when the world is urging you in a different direction. So, what did Sarah learn from all of this? That life is full of unexpected twists, and sometimes the choices we make in the heat of the moment lead us to the most profound transformations. It's not about what others think of you or how much money or fame you can get. It's about staying true to who you are and trusting that, in the end, everything will fall into place. And as for Barron Trump, he had his own journey to navigate, but Sarah would always remember the brief moment when she helped him, a moment that unexpectedly changed both of their lives.